Hey, Dan.
Yeah.
I think you're smooth and good with talking. Record with me, a pod called Sadie Hawkins.
Okay. Hey, and welcome to Sadie Hawkins Pod, the song-by-song podcast about Relient K. I'm Danny,
And I'm Jess.
and we're starting up. Here we go.
This is a great way to kick off the very first episode.
Here's the kickoff. That's a song. That's a Relient K song.
It
I know my
is.
stuff.
It's really funny because
This is a band I've heard their songs before.
it's funny because you wanted to do. Well, okay, so here's what we're gonna do for the first. How many episodes is it?
The first 9 episodes or so. We're going to do the first... So to start off, this is a song-by-song podcast about Relient K. I don't think we're fully committing to absolutely have to do every song, but we're going to, keep going as long as we feel like there's a need to keep going, and there's obviously songs we want to talk about more than others. But for the first 2 months of this podcast, we're going to be starting with the first songs of all the full-length albums. So that's the idea.
Yes, so not EPs or compilations or anything like that. We will get to those songs, but we are just doing the first song off of each album, which is too bad because otherwise we could have kicked the podcast off with Kickoff, which is the first song on Anatomy of Tongue in Cheek.
But instead we have to talk about Hello McFly.
It has hello in it. It works.
Although I don't remember what the first song off of All Work and No Play or Work and Play, Let's Play Together.
All Work and No Play.
All Work and No Play.
It's K-Car.
K-Car. So we're not doing K-Car. We're going to start the next episode with Hello McFly. And we will talk about all of the songs that are exclusive to All Work and No Play, because I definitely want to talk about that album at some point. But
yeah,
just basically part of the reason why we wanted to do this podcast, and we'll get into it a little bit now and throughout the show itself as we do each episode. Relient K was actually like a major bonding experience for the two of us because we're a married couple.
Yes.
I don't know if you knew that. We're married to each other. And when we met, we talked about Relient K. It was one of the first bands we talked about. We've kind of fallen out as far as like maintaining our status as fans. Like when each album has come out over the last, like, say 10 years, we've listened and we've enjoyed them, but we haven't like stayed and dug deep as we did with the first like 5 albums. So part of this sort of project, this experiment, is also to become bigger fans of Relient K again, sort of dig deep into the later albums. So I didn't want to just start off like a lot of song-by-song podcasts do, where they just pick songs sort of at random, or they have a particular, or go in alphabetical order. I wanted to right off the bat get a nice sampling of the entire history of the band. And that'll sort of set a baseline for our reactions personally to each album, to each era. So, era. That's how it's pronounced. I'm originally
I was going to say you're showing your Boston.
Yes, so to tell a little bit about ourselves, I'm originally from Boston. You're originally from Florida.
Yes.
We met when I went to college in Florida, and one of the reasons why Relient K is one of my favorite bands of all time is because when I grew up in Boston, this is something that you, Jessica, are going to have to put up with when we talk about early songs all the time, is that when Relient K used to come through the Boston and New England area, they were constantly remembering my name, and I was always having conversations with them. So I have all these little dumb stories of me being a high school kid and talking to Relient K and sort of having like a vague-ish friendship with them as far as like a fan in one area, that they always remembered my name, as well as my friend Johnny, who he lives far from us now, but maybe we can get him on Skype in a future episode at some point.
It's great. I love it.
So when we met in college, then I learned you had it's sort of a history of Relient K, and that's how we ended up talking to each other at first.
Yes. Yeah. I first heard Relient K on a youth group ski trip, and they played it on the bus on the way home, which Danny said, I mentioned that I'm from Florida, so we actually went to like the Carolinas to go skiing, and then it was on the trip back that they played Anatomy of Tongue in Cheek, and I fell in love with Sadie Hawkins Dance. And
Poser, getting into the later albums. Sorry, folks. Don't worry. I'll be around here to mansplain the earlier albums than Anatomy and Tongue in Cheek.
So I heard Sadie Hawkins Dance and they played the whole album and I fell in love with it and I went to buy it and I was driving at the time and I actually went to the Virgin Megastore because I lived in the Orlando area, like very close to Disney in a little town called Celebration. Shout out Celebration, Florida. So I drove like across the border into Disney World and went to the big Virgin Megastore there. And the only album they had was the self-titled album.
Your life sounds like a fairy tale.
Well, I never met Relient K. Your life sounds
No,
like
I
a
mean,
fairy
you're driving
tale.
into Disney World to buy
yeah.
a CD.
Yeah.
You live in a magical town where everything is planned for you.
Pretty much. Yep. I actually came from Stepford. So anyways, when Danny and I first met, one of the very first things I think you asked me was you were like, oh, so what are your favorite bands? Because you were super into music. And you're like, what's your favorite band? And I was like, oh, I don't think you'll have ever heard of them. Just so hipstery of me right off the bat. I'm like, oh, I don't think you'll ever heard of them. And you were like, oh no, try me. And I was like, Relient K. And Danny's like, oh yeah, I know Relient K. I know Matt Thiessen. And I'm like, what? Hello, new best friend.
And the truth was, like, I just knew them when they would come through town and I would talk to them at shows. But, like, I'm like, yeah, I'm best friends with them. So it's exactly like the setup for the movie for a Goofy movie. It's like, yeah, Power Surge. What was that guy's name? I'm not a good 90s
gosh,
kid.
I think you're right.
Am I right? Something like that.
I think it was, oh man, everybody's going to be writing in like, you're wrong.
Well, if you want to correct my a Goofy movie knowledge... Now that you kind of have the sense of where we're coming from with the band, we will have Twitter is Sadie Hawkins Pod. Our email will be sadiehawkinspod@gmail. And we have Instagram also at Sadie Hawkins Pod. Clean sweep.
Ooh, fancy.
The big 2 plus Gmail.
No Google Plus? No, I think they got rid of that, didn't
No,
they?
no Google Plus. But we do have...
A Discord?
No.
A Reddit?
No.
Live Journal?
We don't deserve any of this. What we have is a Google Voice number, and I didn't tell you about this, but if you want to call and leave us voicemails and tell us all about what you think of Relient K and tell us how we're wrong about our Disney trivia, you can call 402-95-SADIE. That's 402-95-72343. And I did this without telling you about it.
Slick.
I know, this is a surprise.
It's a huge surprise.
There's nothing better. Oh.